I'm Dr. Hackey Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. And today we're taking you all the way up to Iceland. Yes, that's right, Iceland. We're going to talk to the founder and CEO of Atlas Primer, Hinrik Atlason, and he is going to tell us all about this revolutionary thing he's got going on. Hinrik, welcome.
Thank you, Hackey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. I tell you what, you're really on the cutting edge of things up here. Why don't you introduce yourself properly to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Hinrik. I'm, as you said, the founder of Atlas Primer. We are an educational app that specializes in creating flexibility in the educational system for students who are neurodivergent. We do that through, among others, AI, but also just through rigorous product testing and close communication with our users, just to find the things that work best for them and make sure that we're really delivering value.
So you're trying to level the playing field for those of us whose brains are different, whatever our labels might be, dyslexia, autism, you name it.
Yeah, that's an accurate way of putting it. You can say that we fundamentally believe that the disadvantage people who are neurodivergent have in the educational system is not because they are neurodivergent, but it's the lack of flexibility in the educational system. So by celebrating our diversities and differences and looking at neurodiversity more as just the diversity that it is, that we all think differently, we process information differently, we can create more flexibility that allows more people to reach their full potential.
And it would seem so logical to do so. You know, every brain is different. And if I have a blind student, why am I going to write on the blackboard? It's not going to do them any good. What do you see as the main roadblock to schools creating inclusive learning environments?
I would say that, first of all, I think that, the vast majority of people involved, they genuinely want to be helpful. I think they just don't really know how to be helpful. And I believe that there is a certain survivor bias in the educational system, which means that if people go through the educational system, which today is just based on reading, writing, sitting still all day and being tested, to an obscene amount, then you might consider, if you go through that system with relative ease, you might consider a career in that system. But if you go through that system and you're bumping your head into every obstacle along the way, you just want to get out and never look back. So that kind of enforces the belief that there is this one normal way of learning, and that everyone that doesn't, fit into that small box, they're different or they have a learning disability. And that is what I think is the biggest roadblock: not knowing how to help, how to fix this.
Now, you're a worldly man. You travel all around the world. You've been working in the neurodiverse space and traveled around. How would you say neurodiversity acceptance and inclusion is doing around the world?
I would say that it's getting better, for sure, but we're not quite there yet. I kind of see neurodiversity, the state of neurodiversity today reminds me, and this is not a scientific fact, it's just my impression, reminds me a little bit of how we've dealt with things that, that we didn't understand, before. For example, we didn't understand the diversity of sexual orientation, so we tried to cure it. Women weren't allowed to vote for a long time, but there are these things where we don't understand what we're dealing with, and we label it with some kind of deficiency, and we try to fix it. instead of looking at it as the diversity that it is, and that it can actually be beneficial to our societies if we can harness it correctly. I think one of the things that made the most impact on me in the recent years is a study made by the Boston Consulting Group on the economic impact of dyslexia on the state of California. They found that out of that about 49% of the state's homeless had dyslexia. And that is just staggering, given that the general prevalence is about 10% in the general population. Among the incarcerated, about 48% had dyslexia. And it's not, I believe, because they are, that they are, more disposed to end up in these unfortunate situations, but we're not supporting them. We're not giving them what they need to live a full life, to reach their full potential, to do what they want to do.
Now, suppose I'm a school administrator, I'm watching this video, and I'm wondering, how do I rethink my approach to addressing learning differences? What would you tell me? What would you tell them, these school administrators?
I would say add flexibility, because I don't believe that there is. I don't believe that this is a hard problem to solve once we really appreciate what it is that actually has to be solved and how we solve it. I would say just add flexibility, add audio so that more people can listen, add more flexibility in the learning environment, so more people can move around. Some people just think better and process information better when they're walking around. Add more conversations so that people can explore topics on their own premise, so that people can piece information together in a way that works for them.
That's a segue into Atlas Primer. Tell us about how that can help.
Well, it implements what we call these 3 pillars of flexibility, and I touched upon them. One of them is audio. A lot of people struggle with reading comprehension. It's not a learning disability; it's a reading problem. So that can be fixed just by increasing the way of audio everywhere around us, allowing people to consume text as audio. That's not hard, really. The second part is just mobility. A lot of people have a hard time concentrating while sitting still. So they need to be able to take the learning environment with them into everyday activities and learn wherever they find themselves. The third part is just having it conversational. And this is something that just recently became a real option, given all the advances in AI, because then that allows people to take complicated subjects, break them down, and explore them in a way that works for them. To piece this information together and just ask questions when there's something that they don't understand. And having all these things together creates the flexibility that helps more people reach their goals. And this is what we're doing at Atlas Primer.
How did you get into it?
Well, I've been making AI stuff for a long time. I've been making AI applications for about 17 years. And in 2006, for example, I made a voice assistant for Windows, which was surprisingly good, actually. I love the voice interface. The voice interface has just so little friction, and it allows us to, interact with computers all around us, no matter what we're doing almost. And then, I was creating learning material of my own. My career in AI led me to be approached by a local university. They asked me if I wanted to bring some of my experience into the classroom, and I thought that was a great way to give back and for me to understand better what the next generation is thinking and what's important to them. And I actually thought, and this was very naive of me, but I actually thought that coming back to the classroom after all these years, I would be entering something that would be, borderline futuristic. We had all this wonderful technology. So it must be amazing to be a student today, I thought. But when I arrived, I found the opposite. The misalignment between the educational system and the students had actually gotten worse. And I think it's because now we had all this wonderful technology and flexibility and on-demand services and nonlinear programming all around us, except in the educational system. So that just amplified the friction. So I thought, what if we can combine the, my passion with which are voice assistants, with, for example, audio, which is just very convenient. You can consume information on the go. You become a more productive reader, although that sounds like a contradiction. And it reduces stress and other things because you can consume more. And then I thought, how can we apply that to learning? And I deployed that in one of my courses, and the students loved it. But the students who were neurodivergent, they said it was a game changer. For them, it was a complete revolution. And that's when I started thinking more about how we can apply, just these added degrees of flexibility to a group of students that is just being terribly neglected in the educational system that we have today. And there's neurodiversity in my family, but I was one of the people that actually believed that this was a learning disability and didn't think twice about it. But then when I started diving deeper, peeling off one layer after another, I just found that it's a horrible thing to tell young and bright and promising people that they have a disability in learning when all that's lacking is just a little bit of flexibility in their environment.
How can people learn more about you and about Atlas Primer and all of that? Where do they go? How do they find out?
Well, I think the best way, the most valuable for way for us is just if people visit the website, try the app, and then give us feedback. There is there is a fallacy in the educational system that assumes that everyone is the same and one size fits all works, but we're not repeating that fallacy. But it's hard to design for neurodiversity because that is here we have a lot of spectrums that are sometimes overlapping. And I don't believe any two neurodivergent people are neurodivergent in the same way. So what we do is we just add these degrees of flexibility and allow people to piece them together in a way that works for them. So all kinds of product feedback is tremendously valuable for us. And these are the conversations I enjoy the most with our users.
So it's kind of the fallacy of universal design, and yet we're trying to make an app that gives all the options, no matter how your brain is different, so that you can learn, you can function.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to there is an area of the interface design called inclusive design, and it just means bringing more options to the table. You're not going to make something that fits everyone, but at least you can bring more options, icons, audio, things that people can interact with, and they don't have to be a specific way for this to work for them. They can be many different ways and still going to work for them because someone took the time to think about inclusivity and appreciated that we're all different.
I'm just thinking in my mind when they passed laws for disability, the Americans with Disability Act, and things like that, and I'm thinking about something as simple as making all doorways wide enough for wheelchairs, kind of thing. What that did for everybody in a wheelchair all across the nation. This is almost a reverse. When I say reverse, it's the wrong word. But what I mean is, we're not thinking so much about universal design as much as we're thinking about inclusiveness. We're thinking inclusiveness. So if someone has autism or someone has dyslexia, then they can be presented in such a way that their brain can take it in and they can be successful.
Yeah, and I've studied a lot of um, forums on related to neurodiversity, and it seems to me that probably about 80% of the posts there are mostly from people just looking for support, looking for someone that understands them, that can help them, tell them that they're not deficient, that it's okay. There are ways for them to do what they want to do, and that is a very important element in Atlas Primer. You mentioned the doors. Most people wouldn't notice a wider door, but a person in a wheelchair would. And the same is true with on-ramps, instead of staircases. If you can design a beautiful on-ramp, nobody's going to notice it except the persons that, the people that would be severely, affected if it weren't there. And this is a design principle that we take with us to Atlas Primer, because we are not making assistive technology. Assistive technology implies that there is something wrong with the user, that the user is deficient, and we fundamentally disagree with that. We are just making a more flexible way of learning, and that should work for neurodivergent people and neurotypical people. It's not just about inclusiveness, but it's also about productivity. Audio is a huge productivity enabler. And being able to consume learning material when you're driving to and from school or cooking at home, that unlocks a lot of productivity. So although we are designing this with inclusivity in mind, and specifically towards neurodiversity, we are also designing this for everyone else, because the ultimate goal is that the neurotypical and neurodivergent students can study together without anyone feeling disabled.
That's very well said. Very well said. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to cover?
I think there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic, in particular with the latest advances in AI. It allows us to do things completely differently, and I just want to encourage people not to, these are new. This is a new technology, and that can be scary. And the immediate response can sometimes be to ban it and outlaw it. I would encourage people to instead embrace it, see how we can use that for the benefit of people. If teachers are afraid of an AI doing the assignments and passing the exams, maybe they need to rethink the assignments and the exams. And that's coming from my perspective as a university instructor as well. If an AI could pass my exams, then I would have to rethink my exams. Maybe they just weren't good enough.
Well, Hinrik Atlason, all the way up in Iceland. And the name of the app is the Atlas Primer. And what's the website people can go to?
Well, it's just atlasprimer.com. We're also in the Google Play Store and Apple App Store, just under Audio Learning AI Assistant.
That's great. Well, we hope you'll have time to come back again to Different Brains. And it's been a pleasure to have you. Good luck with everything up there in Iceland and with Atlas Primer. And Hinrik, pleasure to have you. Hope you'll come back soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aki. It's been a pleasure.
Exploring Different Brains is a production of Different Brains. Visit us at differentbrains.org.